Three, two, one.
That's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying.
Snap. Good hold. And the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports
So
history.
any given Saturday, we have a big point spread, and we're going to discuss if the underdog can cover, or is this a spot where the favorite runs away with it. And Rob, we don't have to spend as much time on this one because this spread is insane. I'm showing 52 on Barstool, 51.5 on Circa, and of course Michigan's favorite at home. It's no surprise if you've watched Hawaii in the first two games; they do not look good, and I kind of feel bad for Timmy Chang and what he got himself into. I know he's very passionate about Hawaii and the program, but they had such a bad recruiting class, and I don't know what's going on with that program because they've had some good teams over the years, some really good quarterbacks, some really good offenses, breaking records. They've upset teams, not only on the island, but on the road too. But it just seems like it's night and day from some of those years prior. And now we're showing 52.5, or 52, 40, or 52, 51.5 at Circa, and a total of 67. Where do we start here, Rob?
Well, we could start with what this all originated from, right? I mean, I guess from an outsider's view, because I'm certainly not inside the Hawaii program, but we had a zillion reports on what was going on there last year. And, you know, it begins and ends with Todd Graham, right? There were a ton of player complaints about head coach Todd Graham. And at that point in time, the administration really could have chosen to fire Todd Graham. That's not what they did. They stuck with Todd Graham, and then the mass exodus went to the transfer. Transfer portal's a great thing nowadays, right? If you don't like what's going on at your school, I'm done, coach. And the mass exodus happened, and then they decided, well, maybe we should fire Todd Graham. They did. Like you say, Timmy Chang stepped in. Maybe he can rebuild, but, you know, it's going to be a long process. They're behind the eight ball right now. You gave us the numbers on the full game. Again, in a game like this, sometimes you think the blowout will occur in the first half, and then they'll ease off in the second half. I don't know. Jim Harbaugh's personality is kind of all over the place, so I'm not sure where to go with that. But I will say this, Ben, the first half is Michigan minus 33.5 and a total of 39.5. So they're looking at 30. I don't know. Do the math in my head here. 34.
What is that,
6.
Nick? Like, yeah, they're not even expecting Hawaii to get anything more
35
than
to
3.
36 to 2. I don't know what they're looking for there. But, you know, when you look at Hawaii, Ben, they've been more competitive first two games, first half. First half against Vanderbilt and Western Kentucky, they've been outscored 42 to 20. Second half, they've been outscored 70 to 7. I guess it's where the depth chimes in, and against a powerhouse team like Michigan, where you figure Harbaugh will be rotating players constantly, especially linemen, that Hawaii's going to get worn down second half. And even handoffs by Michigan. We saw it with Vanderbilt. Handoffs became touchdowns. And then the defense was, you know, chiming in with touchdowns.
Yep.
I don't know. It's hard. I think if I were to take a chance, and I haven't played this game either way, I would probably take Hawaii plus 33.5 first half, thinking they'll come out fired up. And maybe you can just run out the clock before you're buried, right? Maybe you can only be 31-0 at half and cash a plus 33.5 ticket.
Yeah, so something that's really interesting with this game with Michigan is Harbaugh basically came out and said in the first few games, I think the first two games with Colorado State last week and then this one, McNamara and McCarthy are basically splitting time, and they're going to figure out who the starter should be. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob or anyone in chat, McCarthy got the start in the Colorado State game, and then McNamara came in? Or it might
It was the other way around.
Okay, so McNamara started, and then McCarthy came in. Yep.
Yeah, and I think, you know, originally, Ben, really quick, and then we'll get whatever the rest of what you have to say, but real quick, he actually, his original statement was, one would start and play game one, and one would start and play game two, and then he went ahead and split some time in
Yeah.
game one. So you probably see them both.
So where I'm getting at with this, it almost feels like Harbaugh is this like mad scientist, and he's like coming up with this like elaborate plot, and he knows like what plays they're gonna run. Like I really feel like not only the first drive is gonna be scripted, like we see in almost every game from coaches. I almost feel like he has the whole game scripted, like because he has a buffer of 52 points on the spread essentially. Like he can do whatever he wants. This is basically like a glorified scrimmage for him. And what we saw in that Colorado State game, if it's anything close to what we saw, I think Hawaii covers this because Michigan did not push the pace. They ran a pretty slow offense. They did cover though, I will say, but I think the difference with covering like a 28 to a 52 is way different from that perspective because you need those possessions. And even if Michigan does play at that same pace, they could cover the spread because Hawaii is that bad defensively. But if Hawaii can somehow get a touchdown, I think they could cover this spread because the implied total, Nick, team total, it's got to be around 6.5, 7 for Hawaii, correct?
For the whole game?
Yeah, or a little higher.
It would be a little higher. Doing the math real quick in my head.
Okay, yeah. I just don't know if Michigan needs to run up the score, and I think they have a pretty easy game last year, right? Or next game.
Yeah, it should be 7.5 for Hawaii.
7.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a cupcake next week, right?
If UConn, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about the easiest 3 games. I mean, Colorado State, 28, 52 point spread, and then they're probably going to be 45 point spreads against UConn, right?
And UConn lost their starting quarterback as well, so they're already on a backup quarterback when they go to play Michigan next week. And real quick, Ben, where the possessions are concerned, one thing to consider with Hawaii right now is they've given up 4 touchdowns in 2 games to defense and special teams from the other side. So when you can put up 14 without even possessing the ball, that adds in. But 52.5 is just a huge, like you say, if they get 7, Michigan has to find their way to 60. It's got to be 60 to 7 to cover at that point. And even if they get 14 defense special teams, that means 46 come from your offense. I don't know. It's a heavy ask, but we'll see. It's not impossible.
Yeah, definitely not impossible. And this spread moved. It was 48, 49 maybe for an open, and no surprise. I mean, I think everyone just saw what they saw out of Hawaii. I mean, they look really bad. And maybe the depth is something too, because in the first half, they haven't looked great, but the wheels just really fall off in the second half. So I'm going to go, Rob, I'm going to go similar to you, but I'm just going to go Hawaii full game. I think somehow, some way, they keep it within 50. Maybe they can score 10, but I'll say like 50. Well, let me think here. 56-7. How's that for a score? I'll go Hawaii plus 52.
That's a cover. I was going to say real quick, they've given up, this is crazy, but they've given up exactly, the Hawaii defense has given up exactly 601 total yards in each of the first 2 games. Vandy got 601, Western Kentucky got 601.
Nick, what are the chances of that happening again?
50-50. Either it happens or it doesn't.
That's very true. Yeah.
What's your over under on Michigan yards? You think they go over 601?
I'm gonna say under. Believe it or not. That's so many yards, but it happened twice.
It feels very hard to handicap.
I feel like Harbaugh might just get to a point where he's just like, he just really stops the game, because Vanderbilt didn't really do that. If you remember, Vanderbilt kept scoring, but at the same time they were just running. So I always like to talk about that, Rob. It's like there's one thing to run up the score intentionally, but then there's another thing where you're just bad and you can't stop anyone, like we saw with Utah State and Alabama. Saban wasn't really running up the score. They were just running the ball, and Utah State couldn't stop them.
Yeah, and so as a former player, Ben, my question would be to you is that even if Jim Harbaugh, and remember this, that when you're the visiting team, you can't take your entire roster on road trips. I think it's 60 players that you can take.
Yeah.
So even if you wanted to go down to the third and fourth team offensive line, for instance, and the third and fourth team running back, you can't on the road because you don't have them with you as a part of the traveling squad. So as a guy who played the game, there's probably instances that you've been involved with where the other side has had second teamers that are so much better than your first teamers that it really doesn't matter anyway if they're just handing off, right? I mean, it's crazy, but
I mean, look at Alabama. Even if they have their third string in, I'm sure Alabama's third string is maybe equivalent to like I'm gonna say this, but maybe Colorado's starters right now, and it's not ridiculous if you look at the recruits. I mean, you could probably compare like 3-star to 3-star, right? Like Alabama's that deep, and kids are willing to not play that much at Alabama until maybe their second, third year because of the way that those players get pushed into the NFL, right? It's just like an easy transition. So kids are willing to stay a little longer. The flip side of that, what you said about the traveling team and having limited numbers, is it could be a good or a bad thing for that team that's 50-point underdogs, because if there is a lack of depth and someone does get injured, you could run into some issues. But at the same time, maybe the guys stay out a little longer versus putting in the third stringers just because they don't have as many backup options. So it's hard to say. I think just this cover comes down to how Harbaugh treats that fourth quarter, and we'll see what happens. This is going to be an interesting one.
it's like I said to you pre-show, I was trying my hardest to dig up any information that Jim Harbaugh was allowing this to be a vacation, much like the Aloha Bowl is for teams that during bowl season,
Exactly,
more than a business trip. But
this could be a live betting opportunity. Could be just to see like what the hell's going to be happening, and I don't know. I hope Hawaii can at least put up some points. I kind of feel for him right now, so we'll see what happens in that one.